No, that's fine.
Should we ask for a cup of tea?
No, 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 it's fine. Thank you, and sorry about the delay because the meeting got extended. And once again, happy to brief you all. As we discussed in the initial day, we had a very productive two-day engagement. So I'll briefly run you through the session-wise what happened. So on the inaugural day, we had the Honorable Union Minister to come and inaugurate this conference. So that was the first session. So his speech was centered around the India's presidency and also about the IWG, what we are trying to achieve. Followed by that was the presentation by us on the priorities for this infrastructure working group. What are the issues that we are going to work in this year? So followed by that, there was a detailed discussion on the infrastructure working group's flagship theme, that is building cities of tomorrow, sustainable, inclusive and resilient. So in that we proposed the work plan and various principles that we wanted to work on, and members engaged very well, and they also gave their inputs on that, and it was received very well. And followed by that, we had various sessions, and in the afternoon we went to Pune University, where the workshop was organized by the Asian Development Bank. The workshop was focused on attracting private finance for infrastructure development in urban cities. So there were eminent panelists. There were 3 panel discussions in that. So in total, 14 experts had come from different countries and different entities, including Asian Development Bank. There was a professor from US. So it was a very good panel, and the discussion was of high quality. The idea of having that workshop is to get inputs into the main theme that we are working on. So they deliberated on various financing models that are successful across the globe. They gave successful examples from different countries like US, about Mexico's successful municipal bond program. So that was very helpful. So all the inputs that we gained will also be used for polishing the principles that we are working on. And the second important deliberation within that workshop was on capacity building. That is how the urban and the municipal government employees or the various stakeholders in that ecosystem and their capacity building for attracting finance, especially the private sector finance. So that was the main theme there. That was followed up by a cultural program there for about 30 minutes. It was a medley comprising of Shiv Vantana, all the traditional Maratha historical folklore, and then the it's a mix of everything. That was very highly appreciated by the delegates, and many of you might have already seen in the social media that they went up to the extent of joining the dances there. So it was a very high engagement was there for that. On the second day, that is today, we had sessions here. So the first session was on the infra tracker. So as all of you know, that's a legacy work which is happening across various presidencies. This year we have proposed some improvements on that. So there was a discussion on that. And then there was another major thing that is discussed on the capacity building itself, where Asian Development Bank is developing a framework for giving training and various capacity building measures for the urban administration. Then that was followed by another discussion on there's a issue called GIH, which is again legacy work which is coming from different presidencies. So And then finally we had the valedictory just now. So that is about the sessions and then the flow of events for the last 2 days. And as I said in the beginning, there was large participation in fact. So we had 64 delegates from 18 member countries physically present, and there are representatives from 8 guest countries and 8 international organizations who took active participation and shared their inputs and suggestions. It was an engaging 2-day event, and we hope that the next meeting, which is scheduled in March, all these inputs will be processed, and we will be delivering actually the draft versions of whatever we intend to do. So apart from this, the delegates appreciated the Indian hospitality right from welcome at the airport, and they are in fact highly appreciative of Punekars' welcome that they got, and they highly appreciated the beauty of the city and how clean it is. So I would stop here and look forward to discussing it.
So, myself, Aman from ANI. You spoke about the priority of IWG was discussed in the meeting. If you could put some light on that priority part.
Okay, I would not be able to share the finer details of what we deliberated. So as I said, the major theme that we have discussed is what we have taken. So within that, there are 5 key things which we are working on. One is how do we make the cities sustainable, second resilient, third inclusive, fourth one is the financing needs of the cities and how do we attract more funding to support these infrastructures. The funding options are government, private, multilateral funding, and there are various innovative financing mechanisms that are evolving, like the land value capture. There's a thing called transit-oriented development and tradable development rights. These are certain concepts that were discussed. And the ADB workshop had actual cases on the land value capture where they have been successfully implemented. They explained us how that was successfully implemented. So that was the learning. The linkage between what priority we discussed and the workshop we organized at the site is very highly connected. In addition to this, the 5th area that we discussed is about how cities have to plan dynamically with people-centric approach. So any plan that any city does should have a dynamic approach because things keep changing, and every plan should be people-centric. So these are the 5 priority areas that we could deliberate in detail as part of our proposal.
Shama from Doordarshan. So you mentioned about the various proposals you all have put across. Can you list those, and were all the countries on par, at par with, did everyone accept that?
So the priority principles, I gave you the 5 broad areas. Within each areas, there are several points. I mean, it runs more than about 20 points are there in each, all put together. So as I said, it was highly appreciated, and there was sort of an unanimous consensus. And of course, everybody had their own suggestions around it. A few of the suggestions were like, though it was covered, I mean, the language is different. Somebody talks about governance model, somebody talks about carbon neutrality, but everything is covered in what we presented. So I would say that it was a robust framework that we had put, and then members highly appreciated, and they all contributed around that discussion.
You mentioned about ADB sharing success stories, especially the municipal bodies.
Yeah.
Can you just give a little detail? What are these success stories, and what is it that we can learn or replicate?
Okay, so see now what Mexico was doing is when the municipalities float the bond, the Mexican government used to give guarantee. But then the advantage of that is, okay, every municipality can raise funds based on the guarantee given by the government. But the disincentive of the model is there may not be discipline in the municipality, because at the end of the day, if they don't pay, anyway government is going to pay. So there will not be fiscal discipline in the municipality. So to avoid this, they came out with a different set of idea, which is known as municipal finance trust model. So instead of the government giving a guarantee, they created a trust, and then the trust gets into the guarantee. So it is like the trust, the municipality and the banker. So it is like a tripartite thing that works. So it became a very successful model, and small, medium, all kinds of municipalities in Mexico were able to use and leverage this mechanism and raise bonds. And they were telling that it's a very disciplined way of organizing things. So that was really impressive, because India is just, the municipal bond is just getting started. So it was helpful.
Sir, Dheeraj here from Hindustan Times. Here, sir.
Yeah.
So during the meet, Pune Municipal Corporation also gave some presentation to the delegates. So how was the response to that, and anything going forward in that case, sir?
No, actually, Pune Municipal Corporation was not part of the G20 deliberations. Okay, they had organized a stall as part of the exhibition area, where they have showcased the projects that they did. So delegates, when they are free during their breaks, they are able to go and see what is presented there. So Pune Municipal Corporation is not part of the G20 deliberations.
Hi, Shiladitya from the Times of India. Like, you briefly touched about municipal bonds, and like you mentioned, it's in its nascency in India, and the fact that only around 6,000 crores has been raised by municipal bonds in Pune, Surat, everywhere.
Yeah.
So the capacity building part, like what do urban local bodies in India need to do? The Mexico model may not be able to be replicated in India, or like other models. So what do ULB need to do, like to be financially solvent enough to attract enough buyers for municipal bonds?
It's a very good question. Actually, the first thing any lender would ask is your ability to repay. Suppose we lend money to somebody, what do we look at? Whether that person will repay or not. Similarly, the first thing that any lender would look at is whether the municipal body has a capacity to repay. That means every municipal body, or any entity for that matter, whoever wants to raise debt, has to demonstrate that, yes, I have enough income source. This is my income source from which I can service your debt. That is number one. Number two, to do that as a overall entity, I should show at least some operational surpluses. So my revenue streams minus my expenditure, I should be able to demonstrate that, yes, I do have surplus from which I can service this. So when you have a documentation to show all this, then comes the next stage. You have to call a third party who can assess this and say, like, okay, your credit worthiness is certified. So the next thing is actually what is known as credit rating. So when we get credit rating, so currently if anybody gets A rated, so they are able to access the municipal bond. So the challenge here is, even the accounting systems in several of the ULBs are not, what I would say, it's not double entry based accrual accounting. Some of them are still in the legacy system. So recently, Department of Economic Affairs, about 3-4 months back, had a very huge workshop in Delhi, where the credit enhancement was a major theme. What is meant by credit enhancement is this. So you make the ULBs prepare themselves, because it's not going to happen over a week or a month. At least it's 1 year, 1.5 year process to set your books in order, and then you move to the system which the market wants you to actually follow as per the conventions. So once you do that, then you can go into them. So we are working on this, and DA already had this, and out of that workshop, I think our people have identified 35 municipalities across the country who have good credit rating, who can actually go to the market. So our next action plan would be to enable them to go there. So there is an action plan on that. You are right. So it's a long-term process, but these are the steps involved in that.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Pratibha Chandran from Sahara Samay. Hi, sir.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
here. Yeah.
So many parameters were discussed, but then all in all, what were the prime and major concerns which are alarming for all the cities that needs to be addressed on an urgent and topmost priority basis, which are probably hazardous and everybody needs to look into it on a topmost priority?
So I think one theme that came was the pace of urbanization is very rapid, and everybody is going to look at the climate change and the reduction of carbon emission or carbon footprint, and moving to net zero was a major theme around which many of the discussions were. Anyway, we had factored it in our sustainability angle, so that's pretty much the major theme.
सर किरण शिंदे फ्रॉम लोकमत कल मंत्री नारायण राणे ने बताया था कि मंदी आएगी, स्लोडाउन आएगा, तो उसके ऊपर कुछ बातचीत हुई क्या? राही लाने के लिए क्या कर सकते हैं कुछ इस तरफ?
Sorry, that was not part of the agenda. So agenda was on the urban, how do we build resilient cities. So that was not discussed, yeah.
सर नमस्कार, मैं ब्रिजमोहन पाटील सर. Yes.
You have just mentioned in your speech now how to develop the city as a people-centric approach. So in this, at the conclusion, in India, which cities are identified for this particular for people-centric approach?
See, now as I told in the first day also, this is not going to be city-specific or country-specific. The entire deliberations include cities that are small, medium, large, and if you take the income category, it will be high income, middle income, and low income. So it is going to be a broad, generic, directional guideline that we will evolve. We will study from different angles and different cities, but then when the principles are approved, it will be a broad, guiding, non-binding, voluntary kind of thing.
Sir, Meghna Dev from DD News. I wanted to ask that this is the first infrastructure working group meeting. How many more meetings will happen? And also, will the same theme be carried on for other meetings, and how is it going to be built up towards the summit? Also, when the proposals were placed, were there any other opinions of other G20 countries? If you can put forth those details.
Okay, good question. Now, we have 3 more meetings to go. The agenda is going to be common. I mean, like, the purpose of having 4 meetings is to, as I said, this is the first meeting where the ideas are introduced to the members. So members, though we share the material in advance, they come prepared, and then when we deliberate, furthermore it gets refined. And for each priority, we have a timeline for delivery. So something gets delivered in the 3rd meeting, something gets delivered in the 4th meeting. So there is a deliverable schedule for all these meetings. So the 2nd meeting and 3rd meeting, 4th meeting, the agenda is going to be common. So that's pretty much fixed. So that is how it the process is like that.
So on the proposals, other G20 countries had different opinions, or was it unanimously?
So, yeah.
There were no differences in that.
Yeah, so as I said, except for one issue, which is a legacy issue, not related to our theme at all. It is continuing from several presidencies. In all the other, the main deliverable that we want to give is the principles on the building cities of tomorrow. In that, there was no discord. There was absolute unanimity on that.
सर ब्रिजमोहन पाटिल फ्रॉम सकाळ न्यूज़पेपर. मेरा प्रश्न है कि आपने अभी कहा कि पीपल सेंट्रिक यहाँ पे चर्चा हो चुकी है इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के बारे में, लेकिन आपने ये भी कहा कि कोई सिटी सेंट्रिक और कंट्री सेंट्रिक चर्चा इसमें हुई नहीं है. लेकिन लोगों को ऐसा अपेक्षित है कि समझो भारत में चर्चा होने वाली है G20, तो हमें क्या मिलने वाला है, हमारी सिटी कैसी डेवलप होने वाली है, उनके मन में ये मूल प्रश्न है. तो इसका जवाब आप लोगों का समाधान कैसे कर सकते हो इसके बारे में?
Correct. It's a very good question. So, see, the process of G20 is to evolve principles that will guide the future development. The purpose of bringing all these countries, along with these 8 to 10 international organizations who actively fund these projects. Now, everybody is on board when we evolve this consensus process. Suppose we come out with some principle, and tomorrow any of the other country or other multilateral agency does not buy that, then even our projects will not get funded, right? So you cannot ask, okay, what will city X get or Y get? But the advantage is bringing all the countries and the multilateral agencies into one forum, so that when the principles are evolved, already we have got consensus on that. So in future, getting funding, getting projects financed becomes easier. So that is the great advantage.
What was during bankers' presentation? Asian Bank.
Okay. I mean, they all are partnering in different areas. As I said, Asian Development Bank was the main partner in the workshop that they organized. That means they brought all the speakers from across the world, and they were the lead partners on that. Similarly, one of the areas, the capacity for building framework, like our friend asked about the municipal bonds and what is lacking. So the capacity building for urban administration, we are going to entirely sharply focus on the financial part of it and the municipal bonds kind of initiative. So if a municipality from where it is today, if it has to successfully raise the bond, what is going to be the process? What is the kind of capacities it should have, internally or externally? All this is going to be done in that report. That report is again being done by ADB. There is another report which the World Bank is working as a partner with us. That is enablers for inclusive service delivery. So as you know, in urban service delivery, the primary motive is everybody should get equal access. If somebody is not getting access to it, that means there is a barrier. So identify the barrier and come out with an action plan how to remove it. So that report is being done by World Bank. So similarly, there is another organization called OECD, and they are also going to come out with a report which is going to be the compilation of all case studies where financing was successfully done for urban infrastructure projects across different countries, across different instruments. So it is going to be a compendium of collection of various case studies. So these are the other external agencies that are working.
Good evening, sir. This is Swarali from Mirror Now. So my question to you is that while we discuss about infrastructure, population outburst is a major issue in cities or urban centers due to migration and various other factors. So how did you look at it? Like, what was the discussion and how was the aspect looked at?
Okay, so we cannot, as I said, like now already 50% of the global population is living in cities. This is going to grow 1.5 times. That means 6 billion people will live in cities by 2045. So this process, it's on its own going on. Like, say, why people move to cities? Because of better economic opportunities, better health, educational health facilities. So you cannot stop somebody's aspiration of moving to a better place. All that we can do is, how do we facilitate he has a better quality of life when he comes to a city? That was the main theme. So according to that, so what are the infrastructural needs that will come, and how do we finance, and how do we build our cities better for the upcoming influx of population? So that is the major thing.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
I just want, there's a lot of discussion on municipal bonds. So what about lending from multinational institutions? What is the situation? How do they view and what can role they can play in changing the environment?
See, that is, again, it was not part of the G20, even municipal bond for that matter is one of the instrument that we discussed, right? So the multilateral project funding is a different stream altogether. So it comes through the, sovereign country route. So basically, every multilateral institution has a set of portfolio to fund, and then they will have country allocations, and then they will have sector allocations. Whenever they find a project suiting that objectives, they will certainly fund. So many of our cities have already got funding in the transportation sector, in the wastewater treatment sector, in the water supply sector. So ADB, World Bank, all of them have been funding. So that's a different stream altogether. But then that is one of the source. So one of the points was also on how to increase the role of MDBs in the urban sector project financing.
I'm Chaitrali Zandurkar. I work for Maharashtra Times. You have mentioned about 5 key points. So, are they based on SDGs, what we have accepted? And second, is there any specific relation with green funds or related to natural disaster?
No, actually, out of these 5 priorities that we discussed, our first priority is what Indian presidency under infrastructure working group is sponsoring. That is building cities of tomorrow. That is sustainable, resilient, and inclusive. So under that, there are 5 priorities that we have proposed. So that is entirely our proposal for this year, which was well received by the members. And because you asked about SDGs, SDG 11 talks about the urban development and then the thing. So it is linked. You are right. So SDG 11 and urban development is linked.
So I have a follow-up question to Swarali. You said we can't stop people from migrating, but definitely we can give them a better choice in the rural areas as well, because there also infrastructure projects can come up. Were there discussions around this? Because we spoke to the co-chair Australia. He did mention, we can give them choices to stay at a place where they were, born and brought up, and we can give them a better lifestyle there.
Yeah, so one of the concern is when you talk about urban development, city periphery, and then the rural area. So it's like if you look at as a continuum, you can always plan for all the 3. But then we have limited resources within which we need to deliver services. So it is always like the cost-benefit analysis which will drive. So essentially, if you look at that from that perspective, the immediate priority and pressing need would be to tackle this. Obviously, there are social services which always have to be delivered in the rural areas, be it health or education, even water. So I'm not saying that one will be at the compromise of others. So always it's a balancing act. So depending on the situation and the resources, we always do that.
So Meghna from DD News, I have a question on finance, because we were discussing finance for cities. Debt falters. There are many countries who have defaulted on the debts, and then there's a requirement for debt restructuring and such things, and we have been seeing it prominently grow in the past couple of years. Has there been any discussion on, when we are talking about getting finance and investment, what is also, how do these cities pay back their debts?
Okay, strictly that was not part of this working group's subject. There are other working groups within finance track purely working on that. But then since you asked the question, as you may be also aware that when the COVID pandemic came, the G20 group and then the World Bank, IMF, all of them came together and they had a couple of programs. There was a suspension on repayment for quite some time. And also they created these special drawing rights to enhance the credit limit for countries which face this kind of liquidity crisis. So these kind of special instruments were given that specific circumstance. But that was not part of this discussion here, because it was purely on how do we increase the finance flow for urban sector projects. That was the focus. That's more of a macro thing. So it is more of an urban financing. Anji. So March is the next meeting. It is going to be in Vizag. And then the next meeting is in June. The final meeting will be in October. I think, yeah, October.
What will be the next agenda for the Pune IWG?
Yeah, next IWG will not be here in Pune. It will go to Visakhapatnam. So whatever agenda was discussed here, it will be developed further and discussed there.
Hello,
Last question. Yeah.
Sir, I'm Chinmay from Lok Satta. So you mentioned about capacity building of urban administrations. So there is a difference between Indian cities administration and other member cities. So what is the plan for capacity building were discussed in this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Now, but then, the urban administration delivers certain services. What is the purpose of delivering service is to make the citizens' life easier and qualitative. So the set of challenges may be different for different cities. today in India, maybe a city like Pune, or if you take a smaller town, the challenges may be different, but then the ultimate objective is servicing the citizens and making their life easier and qualitative. Similarly, cities in the developed countries also face issues. Say, for example, somebody will have a climate-related issue. There is sea level rise. There is some other cities facing air pollution. Some other cities facing water issue. Some other city in US will face wildfires, forest fire related issue. You must have seen in news. There are certain cities which have never in the past faced issues like day zero event. What is day zero event? Suppose a city has drinking water supply, a reservoir. They will always have a reserve for 3 months, 4 months. But in the recent past, you must have seen in news that certain cities came as close as to 5 days stock of water. So these are all new challenges for everybody. So their capacity to tackle these situations also needs to be built. And now we talk about circular economy. That means recycling, how to minimize the pressure on natural resources. This is also a new area for them. So they have to also learn this. So the capacity building is not that only the municipal administration in a smaller town or a medium town or a developing country town faces. Everybody faces these challenges. So the idea that we wanted to work on is identify these challenges and give a set of framework for everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Joint Secretary, on behalf of all the journalists from Pune, and we wish you all the best for your future meetings.
Thank you, and once again my apologies for being late because the meeting stretched beyond the schedule. Thank you so much.